It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The views represented on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of Bonneville Salt Lake, KSL, or its other entities.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly, a podcast about recovery. If you know somebody who needs some help, have them do what I did. Give Pinnacle Recovery Center a call, and they'll get you on your road to recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. Casey, how you doing, man?
Well, I didn't get another DUI.
I know that now.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a fiasco, so I put it on my Facebook, and just to let everybody know, I got accepted into a program.
But did you put that on... Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I didn't preempt the strike because I didn't know that there was going to be a strike, if that makes sense.
It does now.
And so I got into a program that allows me to get my driver's license back. It's called the 24/7, and
we've talked about it on the show before.
Yeah,
right,
and so what it is a program between 6:30 and 8:30. You go down and you blow at the jail in Ogden.
6:30 a.m.
And 6:30, 8:30.
So it's all day long.
All day long. So 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning. You have a 2-hour window.
Oh, okay.
You go down and you have to blow.
All right.
And then you have the rest of your day to do whatever you want.
Okay.
But while you're driving around with the breathalyzer in your car.
So every time you start it, you have to blow?
Yeah, and then when you're driving, it'll beep and you have to blow within 4 minutes of it.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like I'm a vapor because I've always got this thing up to my mouth going...
Yeah. So every 4 minutes?
No, you've got 4 minutes. It's random. It just,
I see.
It just all of a sudden it'll go, hey, we're just checking in on you to see if you're okay.
So every 4 minutes might become a traffic hazard.
No. It just, I think from Farmington to down here, I had to blow once to start it and then once while I was driving.
Casey drove to work today?
I drove to work today, buddy.
Yeah, right here.
Woo! And so then when the day's done, you have to go back and test at 6:30 and 8:30 at night.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a 12, 14-hour deal.
Yeah, and so you got to do that for a year straight.
Uh-huh.
Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's.
No days off.
No days off.
Okay.
So that's the thing.
So you can't really travel out of town, right?
No, but to get your driver's license back, I think it's worth it.
Oh, I think it's a great opportunity for people who are serious about, staying sober, yeah.
But to get in the program, I had to get booked.
Well, because this program doesn't exist everywhere, right?
Only in Weber County.
Right.
And so I get into it, and
So you have to be booked into Weber County.
Yep.
This is important for our story.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
So they take a photo.
Yep.
I thought they might take a photo, so I did my hair,
Hey, you
put
look
on a nice
nice.
shirt, and
did.
even when they said, hey, we're going to take your photo, Mr.
It was
Scott.
no Nick Nolte sort of picture.
I smiled.
Yeah, you looked happy as can be.
And then when that was done, I got out, and I had to go to a golf tournament. Now, had to go to a golf tournament.
Yeah,
Maybe not the right word
I was
to
going
say,
to jump on that.
but I was lucky enough to go to a golf tournament.
There we go.
So I'm on about
While everyone else
I'm on
was
about the
at work.
third hole,
Yeah.
and my phone starts
Blowing up, right.
And the first text I get was from you.
Okay.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? Hearing some
Disturbing news.
disturbing news. Just want you to know that I love you. Call me if you can.
Yeah.
I was like, Dr. Matt. All right. So I called you up, and you said that there's a mugshot of me out there saying I got arrested for another DUI.
Right. One of our mutual friends, who's a little bit more on top of the whole news stories every day than I am, sent me a text with your picture, your new mugshot, showing that you'd been booked into Weber County for DUI that morning at 7:30.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, but I was worried.
And so you sent a text. And that's part of the story that really warms my heart, because there were a lot of great texts like that
good.
going, hey, look, just hearing some news, just want to make sure you're okay. And they end the text with no judgment here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's great.
And I was like, oh, that's great. And then I get on Facebook and I see some of the comments, a lot of judgment.
A lot of
judgment.
Yeah.
You know, and the weird thing is
Facebook, we love it.
there was, some people that, because I read all the Facebook posts on Project Recovery, my own Facebook page, and anytime my name's mentioned,
You check it out.
I check it out.
Right.
And a lot of the people are like, hey, you're doing wonderful things. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on the 1 year of sobriety. And I'll see who likes it and who dislikes it and all that stuff, which is probably not healthy for me to do, but I do.
Yeah.
Some of them same people were the ones like, I knew he was going to mess this up. Jackass.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, huh?
Yeah, and then so I put out the statement that says, hey, look, no, I just got a new program. This is not a new DUI,
Right.
and that's it. But the thing that I really wanted to know is when you sent the text, because we work closely together.
Right.
And I said, did you believe it?
And, in my head, separate my head and my gut a lot, I think, in the work that I do. And my head was like, oh my gosh, that doesn't make any sense. And then I did a gut check and I'm like, I just don't feel it, because I had just seen you the day before and I didn't feel like that was accurate. I'm like, no, Casey's really taking his sobriety very seriously. I don't see that happening at all. And he looks too happy in that picture. He looks good.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to double check with you and make sure that something weird hadn't happened. And in fact, the friend of ours that alerted me to the situation, he and I were just talking about like this has got to be some sort of procedural sort of thing, right?
But what I'd like to do is tie it into the recovery world, because a lot of times people are doing their best and things do happen.
Right.
And what you really want to do before you have a gut reaction is find out the facts and find out the truth.
Absolutely.
Before you go and say, well, I knew he was going to mess it up, or that's what I thought was going to happen. You're worthless. You're no good.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot in the recovery world, where people say, hey, I am champion you. I want you to do good and all that stuff. But as soon as you have a mix-up, a fall, a slip or something,
They're all over it.
Hard.
But you know what, Casey? In my opinion, and I'd be interested to hear if anyone disagrees with me, I think that says much, much more about the person who's talking and the issues that they need to work on than it does about where you might be at in your recovery.
And I think I for what I did on the Facebook post and with people reaching out to me is I just told my side and left it at that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like I needed to defend
don't need to respond
or,
to that.
or,
No.
or get into an argument over Facebook about it, because I'm not going to change your mind, obviously, because I told you what happened. You didn't believe it, and so there it is.
Honestly, if somebody's listening right now and they're one of those people that blasted you when they thought that you had gotten a new DUI, I would just challenge them to say, hey, this is a good opportunity for you to do a little self-reflection and say, like, why was I so quick to criticize him there? What about me felt the need to do that? Why did I jump past the logical thing to do, which is find out the truth first? And maybe there's something for that person to work on so they can become a better person, because the truth is there were a disturbing number of those negative comments.
Yeah. But I'm doing wonderful. I'm still rocking and rolling.
No, you're doing great.
And having a great time.
Yeah. And I applaud Weber County for having this program.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we'll find out more about it throughout the journey. Hey, before we get to our guest today, and she's amazing. I've talked to her. You've talked to her.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a very insightful podcast today. I've been dying to ask you this question.
Oh, okay.
Because I got 2 new addictions.
Okay.
One, I'm addicted to Swedish fish.
Really?
Oh my gosh,
Okay.
man! I'm really into those right now.
Yeah.
And I
well,
like
they're
them.
classic.
They're great.
There's
So I'll
chewy
stop,
sugar.
So I'll stop at the gas station and I'll get me some Swedish fish, and then I get me a Diet Mountain Dew 32-ounce foam cup with the edible ice, the crushed ice.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
And then I mix a
love
little
that.
cherry in it. Okay.
Okay.
And it's
A little
pretty good.
twist, yeah.
So, but when I go there and I notice I've been doing this, and I notice other people do this, and I wonder if you're that type of guy. I'm filling the cup, 32 ounces. And we get to the very top.
Yeah.
I pull it back. I take
Give a
2
little-
big gulps.
Yeah, a little
and then
extra
put a little
sip.
more back in there.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
I don't think I do. I don't think. I mean, I'm sure I have before. I think everyone's probably done that. But now no. Not
There's
really.
a lot of people who do that. And
Yeah.
Does that say something about my personality?
I just think you love Mountain Dew.
Amen. I do. Diet.
Diet Mountain Dew. I've done really well this year on getting away from soda. A lot of tea. You can see I'm drinking tea today. But when I have gone back a couple of times and had a regular Mountain Dew, it is way too sweet for me. So I prefer the diet too. If I'm going to have one, that's what I like.
Felicia, do you like Diet Mountain Dew?
I think I'm like the wrong person for you guys to be talking to on this subject because I'm a health nut. So,
You're a health nut.
So she just sticks with Swedish fish.
But I was addicted to Swedish fish at one point too, and Sixlets, and Reese's, and Pepsi in that order.
Sounds like you got a little bit of an addictive personality.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'll tell you what, sugar is nothing. I mean, the reality is sugar is it's something or else. I mean, there are so many people listening right now. I bet if you really were honest with yourself, you probably have a sugar problem. I know I've had one.
Yeah. So our guest today is Felicia Marie. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here, guys.
No,
you guys
thanks.
are awesome to listen to.
Hey, thanks for coming in. Felicia Marie, let's find out about your story and what you're doing now. How did you come to want to be on this podcast?
Well, actually, I saw you post something yesterday, and I've been following your page for a little bit, and I was like, I just need to write him. And it was my gut. It was my gut talking to me. And I listened, and I was like, I just need to write him, and we need to talk about some real solutions for recovery. And so I reached out, and you're like, oh, do you want to be on the podcast? And I was like, oh, crap. I didn't think that was going to be like the response.
Be careful what you ask for.
Oh, but I was asking for it.
And
for
we're going
sure.
to get to that in just a second because I want to find out more about it. Because the thing that really caught my eye was, do you want to talk about real solutions? And I was like, she's probably got something a little bit different, something that we haven't heard from, and we want to find out about that. But how did you get into this world?
Oh, man. I was born into the recovery. I tell people that all the time. So my story, I have a really long story, and I'm wearing a shirt today that says unicorn because I believe I'm a unicorn. And a lot of people don't believe in unicorns. So that can be a downer for a lot of people, is to think that I'm someone that people don't believe in. But that's what I lived in the majority of my life. So
tell us more what that means to you, like being a unicorn.
Yes. So what it meant was I like to use analogies, right? Because it helps people simplify and understand from different perspectives. So we all buy a deck of cards we're given a deck of cards when we're born, okay? And it's freshly packaged and beautiful, and it's full of everything you need in it, right? Every king, queen, ace is in there. Nothing's missing.
Casey has jokers.
Yeah.
You have a lot of jokers.
Right.
I can see that for sure, Casey. No judgment, though. No judgment.
It's okay.
I see the jokers.
Yeah, right.
But I feel like that I was given an empty deck of cards, okay, when I was born. And what that means is your environment and your parents shape what's inside of that deck. And what was put in that deck was abuse, physically, sexually, mentally, emotionally, divorce, separation, division, poor nutrition, poor diet, no stability, no structure. And I lived it all until, from a young age. I would say kind of started when I was about 5 or 6 is when I can trace it. So from that point, I went through a lot of things. Like the sexual abuse was the biggest thing that I have in my memory, and with my PTSD, that's one thing that I've been working on releasing and working through. But being sexually abused while your parents are in the other room partying, that was it for me. Understanding that my environment and what was put in those cards is what led me down my own path to addiction, because I believe that environment is a big factor in your usage. Whether you grow up in a beautiful home with no alcohol or drugs, it's like, this is what you don't touch. And there's so much emphasis on stay away from this. This isn't good for you. And then you grow up in my environment where everybody's drinking, doing drugs everywhere around you. And you end up doing it because that's what they're doing.
That's your normal.
Yeah. So that was my normal. I grew up with a mom that went to alcohol a lot after my mom and dad divorced. There was a lot of anger between the two of them. A lot of drug use that I would witness. I started smoking when I was like 7 years old. I was literally smoking cigarettes when I was 7.
Wow.
And it was okay.
I've only met a few people that have started that young.
Yeah.
And that was okay. No,
It was, we were just being cool, right? Me and my brother were like, oh, we're smoking cigarettes in front of the neighbors, mind you.
Wow.
And they were actually LDS, I remember, because we went to church together. And they were just like, like I could put myself in their shoes right now and just be like, oh my gosh, I need to help that poor child.
Sure.
But did anybody help?
No. And what's really odd is that I ended up going to church on my own because I was just looking for some kind of stability. And I was only 8 when I took myself to church with my friend. And my family wasn't even religious.
Yeah.
So I was on
you're
this
bringing
journey.
up a really important point, which is that children do crave stability. It creates a sense of security. And kids will go to great lengths to find it if it's not provided for them.
Yeah, I really believe that, and I believe that's why I went. And I went and got baptized, and I would stay as much time as I could spend at my best friend's house because her dad was a police officer, her mom and dad were married. That was a good environment for me, and
Felt
I just
safe.
naturally stayed there as much as I could. And then they ended up moving away, and to be honest with you, it was kind of downhill from there.
How
So,
old were you when they moved away?
I was 8. It was right after I got baptized.
Okay.
And we had moved a lot, right? So I moved probably more than 10 times from the age of 6 till the age of 12.
And see, that's sad when you say at 8, it's all downhill from there because, to be honest, it seems like it's been all downhill from the get-go.
Yeah. Like, right? That empty deck of cards that I was just given.
It's a good analogy.
It is. And then what was really interesting is each card that was put in wasn't one that I chose, right? So we live a life of circumstances, and your circumstances shape your decisions and what you live in. So I really have this belief that if we can give our children better circumstances, they live through those, which is their environment and their nutrition and what you're teaching them and guiding them with. They have different circumstances. So I feel like they can make better decisions. But to be honest, I've seen addiction on both sides with a healthy home.
Sure.
And on that side too, but I didn't live that, so I can't speak from that place.
This is your story.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
at 8, it starts to go downhill from there. You're already smoking cigarettes. Are you drinking?
I started drinking when I was 11 and actually fluently drinking by the time I was 12. So I got molested in another room when I was about 9, and my parents were in the other room partying. And this man was my aunt's boyfriend, and I was not the only girl in the room, mind you. There were 4 girls in this room, and he got to every single one of us. My sister and 2 of my aunts were in that room.
You're listening to Project Recovery. More with Felicia in a second.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Did you guys tell anybody?
Nope, I didn't. So this is what happened. I think I blocked it out. And as a psychologist, you can probably understand what that really is.
It's a survival technique that children do when they're in a situation that's unsafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It's just buried. Mm-hmm. So when I hit my first menstrual cycle at the age of 13, it opened up that trauma.
Okay.
So that's what released the trauma. And I was 13 telling my mom this story. And I'm not going to, step on her shoes and her toes as far as who she is as a mom. I love her very much. But nothing happened when I said anything about it, to be honest.
Did she at least believe you?
I would like to say she did. But from my experience with my parents, I don't have that safety and trust where I could say, I'm a believer of action, and no action was taken. So from that moment on, I was not worthy of love. And this is what happened, okay? It stirred up these feelings and emotions which are a part of PTSD, and I was not worthy of love. I was not worthy of being cared for. Nobody fought for me. No one really went out to bat for me and what I went through. So I was on my own, and I lived that way until a couple years ago, to be honest.
How old are you now?
I'm 32.
That's a long road.
Yeah, it's been a tough battle, man. That's just the beginning of my beautiful journey.
But you have so much confidence today, and such a glow about you, and it's amazing. I want to hear more about your story. So at 13, you start drinking regularly.
Mm-hmm. Like going to keggers with my older sister. So my mom is a bartender, and she worked 2 jobs to take care of us. And her boyfriend, my stepdad, was an alcoholic, and he was very, very emotionally abusive. And he was super controlling. And we already were really poor. Like, I remember getting white bread and dumping a pile of sugar in it. Let's talk about sugar addiction, okay? I can talk about that for days because I was highly addicted to sugar. And I would make a ball out of this bread, and I would eat it. I would eat straight sugar balls wrapped in white bread. That would be like, that was like my treat.
That was your treat.
That was one of my addictions. And so I was actually afraid to go down and get food out of the fridge. So I would go to my friend's house and eat at their house because I was so terrified of this man. And I was a middle child. Let's just clear up, middle child, we're the best, honestly. Because
I'm a middle child.
Yeah, like we're forgotten. We do the most. We don't get any credit or reward. We keep doing it. Like,
Hold on,
I don't know.
I'm writing this down.
Don't give Casey any more fuel for it.
So at 13, you're going to keggers. You're afraid of your stepdad. I mean, this sounds horrible already.
Oh, that's not even like the gist of it. There was so much going on in my house. It was on Christmas. He threw our Christmas tree out the back door and pushed my mom, and the cops were called. I mean, he almost killed my little brother. He was very, very abusive. He threw a phone at my little sister. And what was so crazy about all this is I've never spoke out. I never disrespected him. I was never rude. I never treated him differently because I feel like I could see in him what he couldn't see in himself. And I just had that like ability to really,
mean by that?
Like I could see this poor little inner child in him that was just abused and hurt and struggling. And so I couldn't give him any hate. That's what people could never understand about me. And I've carried that through my whole life.
Why did you guys stay in this situation? Your family?
So that's like getting in the subject of my mom's lack of self-worth and value and self-love and her going through abuse. She was raped when she was a teenager. She grew up with an alcoholic father who she loves very much. My grandma went through a lot. You know what? I really trace it all to mental health issues, to be honest with you. And epigenetically, it just transfers through your genetics into...
Well, I think they call it a cycle. And a lot of families live that cycle because that's what they know.
It's a cycle of a few things. You know, it's a genetic biological cycle. It's a learned behavioral cycle. And it's also a cycle of addiction. And so those things are taught and learned from generation to generation. And it's interesting that at such a young age you were able to have more of a empathetic perspective and an other-oriented perspective, because at that tender young age, most people are very self-oriented, which is normal and developmental. They think about themselves and what their needs are, and they have a hard time empathizing or seeing things from another person's point of view, and that's a normal developmental issue. And so you were somewhat unusual in that, but do you feel like, did that help you or did that hurt you to have that perspective of kind of being able to see that this abusive man in my life is actually somebody who's struggling?
So in hindsight now, with my perspective now, I see it as a low point for myself and my own self-worth. And so I can kind of take that, thought of when I was younger and look at how I would handle the situation now. And I feel like, my siblings would fight with this man physically and my mom would, and I never saw it really working. So I think I just innately knew that violence and anger and aggression was not the case. It would never help. And I honestly felt like it was an acceptance thing. I was like, this is how it's always going to be. My mom, I could see my mom that she would put him before her kids. She'd put him before herself. She was very codependent.
Yeah.
Alcohol was her addiction. And that was a story she was telling herself. And at a young age, I accepted that, and my siblings didn't. They were the ones that wouldn't accept it.
They pushed back.
Yeah, and I was the one that was just like, this is just the way it is. And now I see it as I didn't have a voice for myself, right? I didn't have the confidence to speak up and say how I felt. And I didn't feel like I had the environment and the support to actually say anything. It's like, it's almost as if I knew that no matter what I said, this is exactly how it's going to be.
Well, and at that moment in your life and your family dynamics, that's probably not too far from the truth. I'm not sure what, kids are, there's a huge power differential in families, right? And so the adults have a have a higher level of power in what happens in the home than the children do. And at a 12, 13, 14-year-old person in a home doesn't have a whole lot of power to make changes if the adults are struggling with mental illness, if they're struggling with addiction, if its generational cycle is playing out in front of you. Mm-hmm. So, you probably took the passive approach, hoping that would be somewhat insulating. You saw the other siblings with a conflict-oriented approach, and probably it started with normal assertiveness, saying no to things and setting boundaries that were appropriate, but because the adults in the household weren't stable themselves, that turned into conflict.
And it wasn't a stable household because the state actually came in and took you out. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I started going to keggers with my sister. I really just wanted to be like her, to be honest. I love her so much. We're very close now. She's doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. We're both mothers we have 5 kids, both of us do. But we both kind of just latched onto each other, and I followed her lead, and she partied and drank a lot. I was smoking cigarettes, weed, doing ecstasy, and drinking at the age of 14. Like full-blown, going at it as much as I could. Sloughing school. I got into truancy. I ended up moving in with my dad in West Valley City, the hood. And and I got even worse. I actually went downhill a little bit further after that, and that's when the state's custody came in. But
it's a pretty big hill.
It was a really, really, that's just like the teenage part of my journey, right? Because I experienced addiction and other things as an adult too. So
the state comes in and they take you? Is that what they do?
So I was in truancy court because I slept so much school. But to be honest, I was helping my dad watch his kids because he would work graveyards. So I missed a lot of school to help my dad out. Talking about environment, like I kind of was just led down that road. Not saying it was my dad's fault, but as a parent, no way in hell are my kids missing school for me, to babysit.
Well, and yet another environment that wasn't supportive of you as an individual.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So you played a role for other people, but there wasn't an environment of support for Felicia.
Yeah, for me to just be a teenage kid, right? Mm-hmm. So I was already stepping into adulthood by the time I was 13. Mm-hmm. And so I was in custody already, and then I went down this really dark pill trail. I overdosed on these pills called Red Devils at the time. They were a really hot item that you could buy at the pharmacy right outside of it that made you feel like you were drunk. And I just did it way too much, way too fast, and ended up overdosing. And then I got into ecstasy after that.
At what age were you?
I was 14.
That was all at 14?
Yeah.
And then you were removed from the home?
Then I was removed from the home. So I actually overdosed on ecstasy too. So I went really far down. I was really gross. I actually remember my sister. I got home and my sister was like, "You look like you're going to die." Like I was pale, sunken in cheeks. I was probably 20 pounds lighter than I am right now. And she ended up calling my probation officer and saying, "Hey, she's out running around. She's not doing what she's supposed to be doing." She pretty much ratted me out, is what I told everybody at the time. Like, "Oh, my sister ratted me out." And I was with Judge Valdez at the time, who was known to be, I'm
Judge
sure you know
Valdez,
exactly who that is. He had all of my siblings, right? All of my siblings were in the system before I was. This was just a generational family lifestyle. So when he saw me, he was like, okay, maybe we need to start looking at the parents. That's when it kind of shifted with him.
Okay.
He didn't even give me a chance, you guys. He put the book on me so quick because he had my sister and my brother that I went right to wilderness program. I was locked up for 5 months in detention, went to wilderness for 3 months, back to detention.
What is wilderness?
It is the most amazing experience I've had in my life.
Oh, that's great.
It is. I went to AYA. I think it's closed down now because of some things that happened. But you live outdoors for 90 days for women, 45 for men, because women can handle more than men can.
Makes sense.
Let's just be real.
Yeah.
And the curriculum was longer for us because we could do more work. That's what I tell people. And it was awesome. Everybody didn't like it. And what's funny is my sister did the same program.
And it's intended to be a therapeutic program.
It is
there
very
are some
therapeutic.
private and publicly funded programs like this. And so was this your first time really, because in a real therapeutic type program?
Mm-hmm. It was. That was my first therapeutic
And what did
program.
you connect with in that program? You said it was great for
It was
you.
so amazing. It's one of the experiences I've had in my life that I share with everybody. I learned how to really just connect with the earth with nature. That was what my soul needed. Like, I really feel like that is what I needed because I felt I was free, but I had stability. It was really weird.
It was very structured, right?
Yeah, very structured. Like, you do this and this and this. You hike this. I mean,
But unlike
8-mile hikes
detention,
daily.
you're out in nature.
Exactly. So it was very different. You're in a bunch of concrete and chemicals.
They call that the concrete jungle.
It is the
Is that what they
concrete
call it?
jungle.
Yeah.
It is the concrete. And that concrete really dries your skin out. It's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable. Like, we can talk about that, too.
So you're outdoors. You're getting your first therapy session. You're finding a true self. And what happens when you get out of this program?
I went back to detention. This is like one of the hardest shifts of my journey, is I went back to detention. And then I went to foster care for almost a year. And it was hell, to be honest with you guys. My foster care experience, they were Christians, but they did it for the money.
So
And they're good people. Like, I'm still friends with them on Facebook, but their intent was not to really be there and help you transition through life. Their intent was purely
An income.
And you could tell, you could feel it, right? It's like a gut thing. You could feel that. And there was a lot of things that happened. I pulled myself out of the foster care system. I literally called the cops on myself, told them to remove me from the home, went to
Really?
group home. Yeah.
Wow.
I had an experience with them where she had put her hands on my arm and got physical. And that was like, all right, I'm done. I don't like the physical, any kind of stuff like that, probably because of my abuse as a child.
Sure.
And so I stepped away.
So then you move into a group home. And how are you with alcohol and drugs at this point?
I felt really great, to be honest. And
You were living sober at that time?
living sober, and I had been sober for, I went and drank one time when I was in my foster home, and I actually got GHB'd that night. So it was a very quick lesson for me.
And what is that?
It's a date rape drug.
Oh, okay.
Where they put it in your drink, and then they do whatever they want with you.
Right, okay.
And I experienced that night with someone that I thought I was like friends with.
Wow.
And I woke up the next morning, and you don't remember any of it until like the next day, because it really warps your brain. And then it all came to, and I was like, oh, this is what happened. So that was another crazy
Card in your deck.
Yeah, let's just throw that in there. But that was my choice, right? I'm very accountable for my actions. So I go into foster care, I get out, blah, blah, blah. I go to RTEC, which is like a mental health school. Loved RTEC. I'm actually really close, like best friends with my therapist that helped me get through all of my trauma. She came to my house a couple weeks ago. We're very close.
So how old were you when you went into RTEC?
I was about 16.
And was that, again, now kind of your second real therapeutic experience of, I mean, because you have a lot of cards in your deck at this point that are traumatic.
Yeah, lots of trauma. And I'm sure you know exactly how trauma works.
Well, I do from my point of view,
Yeah,
from a therapist's point of view, but every person who comes in and needs help with that, who's struggling with PTSD and trauma recovery, they have their own experience with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.